can you define a class that references another class? Well, obviously the answer is yes, or I wouldn't be making this video. So here I have a student class. Now a student has a name, which is a string, a GPA, which is a double, and a date of birth, which is a date. Well, what's a date? A date is another whole class which I define over here. And in Java, sometimes they refer to this as a has-a relationship. A student has a date of birth in this case. We're going to talk about other class relationships eventually, but the has-a relationship is very important. This is sort of like the composition of functions, right? A student is made up of these things. It's composed of these things, and a date is one of them, and a date is a whole separate class. All right, let's take a look at the date class. So this is the date class, and it might look familiar. We've done similar things before. A date just has 3 integer values. These are the instance fields right here, month, day, and year. This is the constructor, of course, and I'm setting month, day, and year to the input parameters. These are called parameters. Actually, sometimes these are called formal parameters because I'm declaring what type of variable they are. But parameters, that works good. And then I have some getters here. I'm returning the month, the day, and the year. And then at the end, I have a ToString. No big deal. So the date shouldn't be anything new. Now let's take another look at the student class. First, let's look at the student constructors. Now you can see here that I have 2 constructors in the student class, and you can have multiple versions of any method, and that's actually called method overloading. Now I know I haven't used that term before, but an overloaded method is just a method where you have the same name, but more than one version of it, different signatures. So here I have an overloaded constructor method. I have 2 methods called student. These are constructors, but they have different signatures. The first way that you can construct a student is you pass in the student's name, their GPA, that's G, and then a date object. Now, you probably haven't seen this before, but I'm actually passing an object into this constructor, a date object named D. So here I am setting the date of birth to D. So I hope this constructor makes sense. Now I have another constructor right here. This is an overloaded method. Again, there's more than one version of this method. And this version, I'm passing in the student's name, the GPA, but instead of passing in a date object, I'm passing in a month as an integer, a day, and a year, all as integers. So what am I doing with this month, day, and year? Well, inside my constructor, I'm creating a new date object, and I'm passing in the month, day, and year, and I'm setting date of birth to that. This is a little bit different. You haven't quite seen anything like this before, but certainly inside of any method, you can create new instances of an object. That's not a big deal. Now I'm looking at the student tester, and here I am creating a date object, and this shouldn't be any big deal. A date object named D1 is a new date, so I'm running the date constructor, and I'm passing in, I guess, month, day, and year, 9/5/2005. And then I'm creating a new student. S1 is a new student named Jordan, and their GPA is a 94, and I'm passing in the date object D1. Well, let's remind ourselves what's happening here. I'm running a constructor, and I'm passing in these 3 things: the name, the GPA, and a date object. So obviously, I'm going to go back to the student class. That's running this first constructor: name, their GPA, and I'm passing in a date object. This says, hey, pass me in a date object. Okay. Now let's look at the second student. Oh, and I should mention that here I am in a system.out.println S1. Of course, this runs the ToString method for the S1 object. Runs the ToString. All right. So here I'm making a student object S2. That is a new student, Parker. Their GPA is a 96. And I'm passing in these 3 numbers: a month, a day, and a year. This must be running the second constructor. And then, of course, I'm printing out S2. And we could just check out the second constructor real quick. Again, the second constructor for student says, hey, pass me a name, a double for GPA, and then 3 ints representing the month, day, and year. So the last thing I'm doing in my tester class right here is I'm creating a student called older, and I'm setting older to whichever student is older. And this is a little funny here. I'm saying S1 dot older S2. So what's happening here is that S1 is running a method called older, and it's passing S2. So older is going to end up pointing to the student that's older. We're going to take a look at this in just a moment. And then at the end here, I'm printing out the word older, and then I'm running the ToString method on the student who is older, named older. All right, so let me just say this again. S1 is running the method older, and I'm passing in S2. So if I go back to my student class, you can see how I've defined this method called older. The method called older is actually says pass me a student. That's inside the parentheses here. Pass me a student. I'm calling it S. And you can see that it's returning a student, right? I don't have int here or double or void. I'm actually returning a reference, a pointer. I'm returning something that points to a student. So let's check out this method really quick. And again, if I look back at my tester, S1 is running the method and it's passing it S2. So let's go back to student right here. Okay, so when I say this, and we've talked about this a little bit here, this refers to whichever object is actually running the method. So in this case, that's S1. So I'm saying, you could think of this as S1 dot date of birth dot get year. Well, what is this doing? Well, what this is doing is it's running the get year method on this student's, which is S1, date of birth. This is a little confusing, but remember, date of birth, and I can actually scroll up here. Date of birth, as you can see, is a date object. So I'm only allowed to run date methods on a date of birth object. Now, I hope you get that. All right, so I'm saying on this student, which is S1, run the date of birth object get year. And if that's less, then student S, that's the student I'm passing in. So in this example, it would be student S2. If that's less than the other student's year, then I'm returning this. What does it mean when I say this again? Well, this is the object that is actually running the method. So in this example, this would be S1. You know, actually in the tester, I could have said S2 dot older S1, and then S2 would be the object that's running the method, but in this case, it's S1. So you could think of S1 as Jordan if you like, and the other one is Parker. So I guess I could say this is really Jordan. I'm getting Jordan's date of birth. And if Jordan was born in an earlier year, then I guess I'm going to return Jordan. I'm not returning the name Jordan, I'm returning the whole object. This refers to the whole object. I know it's a little weird. It's a little weird, but all right, hopefully that makes sense. Then in the second case, hey, if the two students have the same birth year, then I'm going to compare them by month. And if this month is less than the other guy's birth month, then I'm returning this. And then finally, if I've made it this far, I guess they have the same year and month. I'm comparing them by days. So you might want to even pause the video here for a moment and really think about what I'm doing and make sure this makes sense to you, right? I'm comparing students. I want to figure out which one's older by year. And if the years are the same, then by month. If the months are the same, then by day. So in all of these cases, I'm returning the student this, which is, of course, again, the student who's running the method older. If this one is not older, I'm returning the other student, S. S is the student that got passed into me. I know there's a lot going on, but I think you can handle it. All right, and then finally, let's look at the ToString method, because this is also kind of interesting. The ToString method is printing out, again, here I am in student, the ToString method is printing out the name of the student's GPA, and then for date of birth, I'm just writing date of birth. Well, what is this doing? Well, what this is doing, I think you know by now, is it's running the ToString method in date. Date of birth is a date object. And if I look at the date object, yeah, it has a ToString method. So that is actually getting run. Interesting. Oh, let me go back to here. Interesting. So I hope this totally makes sense, and I'm going to run this real quick, and you can see what's going on here. Oops, so let me just go back to my I am in my tester. So this is going to print out the student who is older, and let me just run this. And in fact, Jordan has a 94 average. They're both born the same year, but Jordan was born in September, and I guess Parker was born in January, so the older student must be Parker. One other thing that's a little funny also is that older is not really a new student object. Notice I'm not saying new here. It's just pointing to whichever student object is older. Yeah, so in this case, it's pointing to Parker. So in other words, S2 and older are both referring to, they're both referencing, they're both pointing to the same object. A little bit going on here. This might be one of those videos you might want to watch more than once, but hey, thanks for watching.